together by Agents International, and we in the forefront in terms of ensuring that we offer solutions even during this particular pandemic, in giving opportunities for learning and also enabling you an opportunity to be able to grow your career in terms of skill-wise. And this is one of the platforms which we are sharing. And the best thing that you can be able to do to yourself is invest in this particular time that you have available in terms of being able to understand how best to perhaps engage and also how best perhaps to perform better when we get out of this particular pandemic by getting 2 or 3 skills that you have out there. So this particular webinar is free for anyone, and we would like to encourage majority of you to share with us. There's a chat button, and this leads me to the quick fixes that we have for the Zoom. It allows us to chat on the side and also allows us to have a Q&A. So you have the Q&A button and you also have the chat button. Both you can use to ask as many questions as possible and also be able to give us insights in terms of raising your hand, and be able to bring you to the bottom in terms of seeing and sharing on what you want us to hear from your end. We have brief presentations from the panelists this afternoon, and they're going to be sharing the concepts and challenges which we are facing in terms of this pandemic. And it's more of moving past the crisis. So we're looking at what are the mechanisms that we have in place, what are the strategies we have in place in terms of moving past the crisis and dealing with the crisis as we have at the moment. I know some of the countries have started to actually go back to work, and they've started return to work policies. Yesterday I saw a policy framework from South Africa, really recommendable. They've also kept up their own measures in terms of moving from one level to another, and also how to move out of the pandemic. So it's also imperative for us as HR professionals to put our foot forward and also ensure that as we are going back to the organization, we're able to contribute to the bottom line in terms of having that are workable. So this particular session is geared towards that, and we'll be having quite a number of discussions during this particular panel, and each one of them is given some limited time, and they're going to share the best practices. We encourage you to post in the questions during the Q&A, and also on the chat. We'll bring those questions at the end of the presentations, which is barely like an hour from now. And then for the next 1 hour, we'll have the panel open in terms of discussing and answering the questions that you guys raised before joining this particular platform, and also the ones that you'll be raising during the platform. So without much ado, is to introduce the first speaker for this particular afternoon, and that is Dr. Dickson Ojukwu. Dr. Dickson Ojukwu is joining us from United Kingdom, and he's passionate about talent, unleashing potentials, and he's a goal attainment and professional performance and learning and development coach in Africa. This afternoon, Dickson, we are bringing you to present to us the question or the solution in terms of managing the challenge of working from home and the associated challenges in times of crisis.
Joseph, and thank you everybody who is listening to me from every part of the world where you are connecting from. Thank you so much. I think my job is simple. I just want us to look at quick. Let me share my screen with you quickly on managing challenges of working from home. Okay, managing the challenges of working from home, and there are some associated changes in time of crisis and in time of pandemic that we're in now. So to start, I think I want to say that during this COVID-19, many organizations are recommending or have started working from home as the next solution to continue their business. For some, they're already used to it, but for some others, this is the first time they are working from home. So it's going to be coming with a lot of challenges, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. I try to take some time to go to the internet and see what people are doing now working from home. And then this is one of them. I don't know whether that's what it looks like in your place. Do you work from home like that? you know, with all your babies and left, right, and on the top of your head. If it's you, just give me a thumbprint. That's the way you work from home. Let me see you. Or this is you. You are working from home, but you are battling between television. Or you have to keep your son busy so he can give you the peace of mind to work. Maybe if it's you, just give me a thumbprint. Let me see. Or say yes. Or this may be you. You have some rascal in your house who are not agreeing for you to do anything serious. So you have to tie their hand and leg and put them on the ground one side so they can give you peace so that you can walk like the lady on. And then there's also scenario about working from home, all the myths in terms of what it is and what it's not. Some people think you are playing. Some other people think that you're working. And some people are actually sleeping. Some people are just using that period to while away time. Or you are like this man who is very serious and then is using his time and trying to do something with his time. This lady who is focused and trying to get some result out of the working from home. Or you are another kind of saints who are just taking time to enjoy their life and drink away their time, all in the name of working from home. I don't know which one you belong to. Or there are some people who are working from home this way. So I'm not sure they are sleeping while they are because nobody's monitoring them. That's working from home. For many people, it's just working from home. I just hope we are not working from home this way. And then let's be realistic. There's a lot of challenges that we're having today working from home. A lot of parents, a lot of professionals are facing challenges from their child to domestic. And there's so much happening. So let's look at those challenges quickly, and then we'll look at some of the preferred solution we have or we recommend for them. First of all, we have a statistic that showed from home looks like in different parts of the world, done recently by a group called buffer.com. And if you look at it, they have one for 2019 and one for 2020 by the right. And if you look at it, the most challenging struggle people have is collaborating and communicating. Maybe it has to do with their internet, has to do with their tool, has to do with how they do in terms of using the technology. Some people it's loneliness. Second one, 20% said loneliness. Some people are also saying not being able to unplug. They start working and they don't know when to stop. Distraction at home comes. Being in a different zone, especially when you have you're working for an international company. It's money in America, Dubai. So such people, they're having differences in their time. Staying motivated. This is not the way we are wired. We are not wired to be, staying at home and working from home. Home is meant for home. Office is meant for office. That's the natural thing we're used to. So it takes a lot of time to motivate. Taking vacation time and finding reliable Wi-Fi at home, especially in a place like Africa. Go through them one by one. First of all, the first thing I see as a challenge is that we need to learn new skill. And that new skill is learning how to use the working from home tool. Some of us don't know how to use the Zoom, the Go to Work, the Google Hangout, and so on. It's for us back to school. We are going back to school. Your teacher may be the next person next to you. My son is sitting next to my right. He's the one that teaches me when I run into problem. We must not be a dinosaur. We must keep on pushing and make sure we're on top of our game. Some other people, it's loneliness. They're alone. They're used to meeting people in the office and having an exciting, engaging time. But now they are alone at home. Maybe other family members with them. So loneliness and isolation is another case. How do we resolve this? Join the meetup groups. Work from a place where you see other people. Connect with the like-minded people so that you have a kind of a sense of having people around you. Very important. Next one is managing distraction. Like I said, it's meant for home. It's not meant for work originally. So when you're at home, there's a lot of things that are placing demand on your time. So you must make sure that you use a productivity tool or tricks that will help you block out all distraction. One of them is to do a to-do list. What am I going to do today? And follow it closely. Use a Pomodoro technique. Is a device that has give you the first 25 minutes to concentrate on a particular task, and then it gives you another 5 minutes later for a review or a feedback. Also, switch off all distractions. If you have phone, TV, things that are around you, switch them off so that you can manage distraction very well. Sometime I was amazed. I spoke to a top executive in East Africa, asking her, how are you coping with the pandemic? He said, at this point, working from home, she is overworking. That's amazing. Some people are actually overworking more than when they used to be in the office. So what you need to do is make a separate work office so that you don't work in the same place that you're living around. If you have enough space in the house, make a separate room for your work. Give yourself breaks and hours for, and then be disciplined about it. The next one is some people are struggling to get into the work mode. They get up and they're at home. Home is home. So they're struggling to get into the mood of work. So it's almost looking like who can psych me up, who can motivate me to get into the work mode. Create a routine. Get dressed as if you're going to work. Don't get up and your night dress and then get to work. Dress as if you're going to work. It changes your mindset that you have started work. Work from a proper desk and a chair. Don't relax on your bed and work. Have a timetable. Take advantage of the flexibility we have. Either you prefer to work in the afternoon or in the morning or in the evening. Find the time that is most suitable for you. It's not a must. It must be 8 in the morning. Find out that time within the flexible hours that is most effective for you. And also have a person that will help you check and be sure you are doing what you're supposed to be doing. Okay, make sure your chair and table are aligned. Ergonomics. Sometimes our homes are not designed for work, so it's difficult for people to sit properly. Be deliberate about it. Ask help from the office. Some offices are helping their staff to have a good work desk in their houses. Ask for help. Get a suitable position in the house. Very important. Some people are struggling. Next one is working a balance between their family and work. Be deliberate. Allocate equitable time to family and time for work. And then have a timetable. Work hard. You pay attention to each of these, your home and your work. And they agree with everybody in your house that there's a time for you to work and there's a time for you to give them attention. Don't mix them together. Also, managing your time is a difficult one. There's so many things that is driving, looking for attention from you. Have a timetable, carry the family along so that they know you are at work. Be disciplined, be flexible, use a notification or set an alarm and have a to-do list. That will also help you to make sure you get to the end. Some people are tracking facilities or tracking productivity and tasks. Some people don't know how to manage their employees that are not in the same office with them. Get smart, set your smart objective. Get them to know specifically as clear as possible what you want them to deliver every day. Create a culture of trust, not culture of control, so that you can manage output, not managing time. Also use a management tool like Status Hero. It will help you check in your time. There's another one called Rescue Time. These are some of the tools. We have the internet that can help you manage. It can help you see what your employee is doing on his laptop or desktop and know exactly when he has logged in and when he has logged out. There's some tools that help you do that. And the last one is quality of connectivity at home. Some of our connectivity at home are not very good. So this is a major challenge in Africa. Organizations need to support their employees, have alternative source of internet, know when it is peak time in your country of peak time, and then make sure you switch off all the appliances that are tapping into the Wi-Fi or the connectivity. I believe that will help you to be able to work better from home. I will leave it back to Joseph to take it on from here. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Dixon, for the insights in terms of understanding what are the current challenges people are facing when it comes to working at home. Things to do with distractions, time management. They're very crucial in terms of ensuring that the employee is able to manage their time well. So these are some of the things you might take for granted, and they might not be things that we might tend to think they are really important. But with this pandemic, we don't know how long we are going to stay in it. So it's very important to take into consideration. And I know so many of the organizations or countries that are well developed actually facilitating this for the employees. In Africa, we might find this as a challenge, but I know there is always a step ahead in terms of putting innovation, in terms of managing our employees and ensuring that you're giving them the right tools to work at home. Thank you, Dixon. The next speaker I would want to invite this afternoon is Sarah Ritson. Sarah Ritson, she's a double award-winning global speaker and a trainer, human development expert, OD consultant. She has a wealth of experience and expertise in terms of growth strategy, international business, and human capital strategies, with deep experience in talent architect and management within African terrain. Sarah Richson, she's currently the CEO of Rich Melle Consultancy, and she's currently based working within the global scene. So I would love to welcome this afternoon Sarah to discuss with us performance during crisis.
I'm very glad to be here today, and greetings to everyone out there. Today, definitely, we are very excited to be touching on key issues around employees and human resources. We are going through a very tough time, I must say. So in the next few minutes, I just want to cover my take on how do we improve employee engagement and performance during and post this crisis, right? The first thing I'd like to say is we need to understand employee engagement from 3 levels, right? The first level is rational. Employees need to be engaged from a rational basis where they're asking, do I still have a job or not? And if I do, what is my job wrong? What is my job description now? Has it changed? I'm seeing my friends being laid off and whatever, are jobs changing? So I think getting the rational things, the documentation and whatever around your employees very clear and with clarity. If anything is changing or moving, be very open and transparent and let them know so that they can have rational engagement. The next step of engagement is motivational. Once they understand, okay, I still have a job, or I have a job for the next quarter, or my job has changed from permanent employee to contract employee for a year or consultant or whatever, then what motivates me to work? So I'm going to walk you through a few things that I think then work on the motivational pieces. And then finally, you get them to the 3rd level, which is emotional engagement, which is the deepest level of engagement you can get your employees. Now, I do understand it can be very difficult to get people deeply engaged during a crisis, right? But guess what? In terms of psychology, things can actually be one end of the spectrum. This is the time people can come together and build even tighter teams. They can surround somebody and emotionally support them and build more stronger bonds. So I would like to encourage anybody out there that during this pandemic is actually when I think there's a great opportunity, and especially whenever I teach emotional intelligence, I say it is when you're going through a traumatic incident that you can really forge deep relationships that can go to the level of emotional engagement. So how you support employees and how you treat them during this time can actually carry emotional fuel for you for the next number of years. So where do we start with all these things? Start with the leaders. Build your army. They're your first layer within the organization that can take it down. And one of the key things I've always said for years is there's a lot of opportunity in the middle management dockets. Why do I think middle managers are so important when it comes to employee engagement? It's simply because they are almost the beam. You know, when you're building a building and you want to take it to a 2nd layer and a 3rd layer, that 2nd layer and the 1st layer are actually partitioned with a beam. Yeah, my brother does building, so he always tells me, Sarah, you have to let that beam dry, you have to get it right, the strength has to be right and everything, because it carries the weight for the next one. So the middle management layer in an organization actually are the ones that can engage the top. So they are giving solutions to leaders and everything. They are passing things from the grassroots and taking information upwards. And they are also the ones to come and cascade any information and manage any shocks to the system, downwards or upwards. So I would say start with your leaders and don't forget middle management and their role. What do we do with the leaders? Train them. I know, and I'm sure Joseph will tell you this and every other trainer in the world, the first thing people did in organizations was cut out training budgets. And I'm not telling you this just because I want you to go out and train and whatever. You can actually do it internally. And what should you train management or leaders right now in? Train them on emotional intelligence, EQ and LQ. LQ is the love quotient. This is the time when the world has to come together. This is the time when you have to go beyond diversity and whatever and become more inclusive. So teaching them and training them to become people who are managers, who are coaches and mentors will be something very key. I'm working with many organizations now, and one of the key things that we are doing is to build or to draft manager handbooks. There are so many of your managers out there who are just figuring out. I always say the most dangerous arrow is the arrow that is thrown in the dark. It's important that they know exactly what they're doing when they're supposed to engage an employee, when they're dealing with somebody who's gone through trauma, when someone calls them and tells them, I'm going through a death of my mother or whatever. And these are becoming real conversations right now. Or it's money. Last time, I think in the last series, we talked about money becoming a reality in terms of discussions. So managers need to be equipped with the skills to be able not to just manage technical performance of an employee, but to understand the things that drive that performance. And so it's important to help them by maybe drafting fact sheets or a manager's handbook, whatever it is that you feel is doable for you, it will help them. The other thing is understand disengagement. When I talk about emotional engagement, people keep focusing so much on how do we get the booth out and get people happy, dancing, eating, team building, and ABCD. But they forget one key thing. You can lay out the biggest buffet, but if somebody has a thorn in the flesh, that smile will quickly become into a frown by evening. So when our managers and organizations and HR for that matter starts understanding disengagement and what are the drivers for disengagement within your context. So I can't tell you for now, but there are certain critical things, obviously, because when you look at motivational engagement for employees, there are 4 key things that have come out top in research. And maybe I can share some of these key things. One of the very top is appreciation. So people are putting in time right now, they are having their salaries cut, they're doing so many things, and you need to learn to use currency of appreciation to actually fuel where you can't fuel with currency in terms of finance. So learn to appreciate little things, teach your managers to say thank you, to say sorry, even when they come into a meeting late. I mean, you don't just show up to a meeting 30 minutes late and you start talking and whatever. And somebody has been, as we've seen, Dixon showing us a father with the baby struggling and wanting to go out and maybe do homework and you've kept them at a meeting 30 minutes. Say sorry. And if they've still wait, say thank you. If they've done a project on time and things like that, it is so important and our managers need to learn that. Then the next thing around engagement is life-work balance. People are thinking because they're remote workers that now we have all the time in the life. Balance has been thrown out and we have integrated life and work into the same space. And some employees have not been given data bundles to work from home, or they're not being supported with the right chairs, the right home office. They don't even have space maybe. They don't even want to go onto a Zoom call because of the way their background will look like and whatever. So we need to support them on things like this. Have a check-in, get their managers to check in. Is there anything the organization can do to support you to be able to continue working? So I think life-work balance becomes very key. And the other two are definitely relationship with manager and relationship with the employees. The other thing I would like to talk about is definitely avoiding granular management. Some of us have moved from micromanagement to nano management to granular management, per minute checking, or what are you doing and whatever. You're in my WhatsApp, you are on my email, you're on my phone blowing it up and whatever. So please, again, just because you haven't gotten an employee the first time or the second time or whatever, tell managers to give it a break and also to give employees breaks. I have found, and I'm sure the other trainers in the panel will tell you, we are working double harder right now than when actually we were working in offices. Because offices you could easily cut off and go. But here it's very difficult and you're working for everyone, for yourself, for your family, for your, even the people who are helping you within home and everybody else and the society. In terms of team building, what can we do? You can have a tea drink up or a wine drink up or whatever through a Zoom call. I've actually watched my daughter doing it last week and I was like, what is she doing? And I thought it's really cool. Then I did it with my friends. And then we've also done a cooking session with my employees and everything. And, just discuss, oh, what recipes are you using and this and that. So those are things that you can actually help. And then you can even have like bring your child to work days. I mean, I did it when I was working in organizations and I told parents, please bring your child once in a while. We see, and we had bring your child to work days. You can also do it now during the Zoom days and let people see, oh, this is Piper, this is my second daughter. Hey, this is Maurice, this is my son. Oh, what? It just starts building and engaging employees to come together. The other thing I want you to understand is around biorhythms. People have different biorhythms. And I keep talking about this because I am one of those people. I hate mornings unless I'm being paid a lot of money. I really don't do anything in the morning that is highly productive. My productivity time starts from around 5 p.m. until around midnight. So you'll see emails coming from Sarah's inbox, even up to around 2, 3 a.m. But if you're looking for me early in the morning, my team will have to take those calls or whatever because it is my biorhythm. And biorhythms go to even the time a person was born. If you're the child who was kicking at night the whole night and then during the day you're silent, probably you'll be born and those are the things. You just struggle with days. I struggle with afternoons. I really do. Joseph, thank you for asking me to do a lot of work during afternoons, but it is one of the hardest things I have to do, so I have to put a lot of focus. So understand your employees with the same thing right now. Biorhythms will kick in these times. And people who like sleeping during the day will sleep during the day. You'll be looking for them and you're putting for them timelines like in the office and everything. And maybe they're like, I'll do that project in the evening. So learn what the biorhythms are for your employees and see what you can do actually to rework. I'm reworking shifts. I'm reworking when I want outcomes. And another thing is be outcome driven as a manager, and also encourage your managers to be outcome driven when it comes to performance. When it comes to performance as well, and you're having performance conversations, conversation means it's a two-way, okay? So the manager is speaking and the employee is speaking. It is not performance appraisal. One way, somebody appraising another. In these times, you want a conversation, and these need to be regular, and on-the-spot performance conversations will help. This thing of waiting 3 months later, Joseph, you know that day I called you and I had you water going on in your pool, you didn't pick, you didn't do this and whatever. Come on the spot. Hey, Joseph, I've been waiting for this amount or this project. It hasn't come this morning. Can I get it this afternoon? And probably going forward, don't do this and ABCD. So it's important to have the spot performance conversations. Then also productivity tools. Help them with productivity tools for the online space. I am lucky that I did 12 years bringing up my children. For those of you who know me, you know I have several children. I'll talk about the number here. With the first one being 27 years, I was very young having these kids. The second one coming a few years later, she's now in university. The third one coming the next time. So every time I was thinking I want to kick off my career, these kids are there and they call themselves oops babies. They're like, Mom, you had so many of us, but how did you manage to work? I cut a deal with my employer and worked from home for 12 years. So they helped me with productivity tools. They helped me with understanding how to manage my time, ergonomics, how to sit properly so you don't have back pain and everything. They helped set up my home office setup costs. I have a printer even until today. I've taken it to everything that I do. I've always had a printer at home. I've had those performance conversations, giving them also solutions. I call them performance solutions conversations now in the time of crisis, because right now you don't want to start pushing performance on everybody's solutions. And then finally, all I'd like to say is endeavor to understand the context of your employees for best performance. What is their personality? Some personalities are struggling. I'm sure if you check Facebook, you see people who are complaining they're sanguines. They need the sunshine for them to thrive. And now they're locked down and everything. So understand the personalities within teams. Know how they will shape and deal with this challenge in different formats. No judging. Please don't judge people negatively. Understand what are the best roles that they will do. There are people who are deep thinkers and there are people who are action-oriented and those who just thrive on other people's energy. So what is it that you can do in terms of your context to help them to self-drive? And so this is how I want to open up the conversation around engagement in this time of crisis and post-crisis time, and also around the things we need to look at in performance. And let's continue the conversation and we can dive into more. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Amazing. And quite informative in terms of the strategies when it comes to returning back to work. And I know some of these things we've been taking them for granted, and we are not able to implement. And the worst thing would be going back and doing the same things that we were doing. The crisis has definitely affected the companies, and there's different ways in terms of now engaging the employees. Others have been under
pay cuts. Others have not had the opportunity of luxury in terms of being out to be able to make the extra money they've been able to make on their part-time jobs, and also other initiatives that are actually affecting them. Emotionally management and work-life balance is very critical, and also looking in terms of how do we do our performance conversations. So quite informative. I'm sure we're going to have Sarah throughout the whole session. Further ado, let me invite now the next speaker. This is May Masharia. She's a global talent acquisition and business partner at CETA in Greater Atlanta in US. May, she's a talent acquisition expert in multiple industries with a master's in organization leadership and executive coaching certification. She focuses on helping organizations find the right talents, develop onboarding programs, campus programs, and understanding talent market. This afternoon, May would be discussing and give us insight on the question which was posed: what can we expect post-pandemic on organizational structure and talent acquisition? So over to you, May, and thank you for joining us.
Joseph, I really appreciate inviting me to the call, and I am just going to share my screen in a few minutes here, and that way you can see a few slides that I do have that I can share, okay? So as Joseph said, that I am in talent acquisition. I've been in talent acquisition for a little over 20 years. And I work with an airline technology company. You can only imagine the impact we have had. So I do sit in the US, so my perspective is going to come from the United States, but I do manage a team that has a global scope as well. So if there's anything that you walk away from today, I'd like you to take away 3 major themes. These are the trends that we are seeing. We're already in discussion about them at a global level around where does talent acquisition need to start to think today, so that you can be ready for tomorrow. I know Dixon said, don't be a dinosaur. These are very critical. So the first thing is, think about your EVP. What's your employment brand today? And I'll go into a little bit more detail about that. That is critical for you to think about today, for you to be a viable employer for tomorrow. Now, I know companies are downsizing at this point, but these are times that you want to start to think about this. The next thing is, if you have not started to lead with data, talent acquisition and human resources has the rise of people analytics happening across the globe. And for you to be a viable partner within your business, you want to lead with data. The business thinks about data all the time. So to have a seat at the table, you want to do that. And the third thing is, look at the global trends, look at the global talent impact that is about to happen. I'm sitting in Atlanta, some of you are in Ghana, Kenya. You can imagine that when I'm a talent acquisition consultant thinking about talent, I'm thinking, maybe there's some wonderful talent in Kenya. So your global, the global impact will really widen our capacity to really recruit across the globe. So think about what's about to enter the market, right? And again, it may be a slower entrance, but you know, there are going to be some major impacts. So what's your EVP? So really 3 core themes that you want to think about, right? So what's your company culture? What's your work environment? Sarah had a fantastic explanation around themes, you know, around your environment and your employees. And then what are your employee benefits that you're really offering, right? So at this time, companies, of course, are doing a major scale down, but there's a quote that I love from Maya Angelou. She's a poet that was really world renowned. And she said, people will forget what you said. They will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel, right? So employees, treat them with care. Those even that you might be exiting, treat them with care, because that is really important. So think about talking to your business leaders and understand what's your EVP and start to capture that everywhere. Capture it where, you know, if your company is online, if you're on Facebook, if you're on Twitter, if you're on LinkedIn, start to capture your stories so that people can understand, you know what, after this pandemic, that's an organization I would love to join, okay? and start to build your pipeline of talent, and really start to think about how you build your brand today as an organization. The third thing is lead with data. I can tell you just from my own experience, this does not have to be very difficult. I started off on an Excel spreadsheet, and I created, at one company that I was at, there was no system to track anything, but I created an Excel spreadsheet, and I was able to showcase data that impacted compensation levels, it impacted where we find talent, and it had a major cost savings to the organization. We took that Excel spreadsheet, gave it to a sharp IT guy, and they built a data access database. So it doesn't have to be expensive, right? And some organizations are at a much, much higher level in terms of their capability, and they have tons of tools to support this. But something from a talent acquisition perspective, organizations that are using predictive analysis are 2 times more likely to improve their recruiting efforts, and more likely to improve their leadership pipeline. So think about your succession planning, think about, you know, how are you really driving your results from a talent perspective today? And those are things that you can start to think about now when we're in the midst of the crisis. These are great value adds to the business, okay? And they are higher stock returns. So the business usually think about what's my ROI. This is how HR as a discipline can really start to drive that conversation and have it sit at the table, okay? So, and the third thing is really from a global perspective, what are some of those impacts that we are seeing and the trends that we're starting to see at a global level? So organizations right now are identifying their talent needs today to see what is that going to look like in the future. The type of jobs you have open today might not be the ones open tomorrow, right? So start to think about what does your organization really need from a talent perspective. In the organization I'm working on right now, right now at CETA, we are even adding types of roles into our organizational structure because we know that individuals may want to work from home more, the ones that are more productive. So what type of jobs can we categorize in terms of our workforce by mobility? There are some people that love to work from home, they're more productive, and there might be opportunity for cost savings from a real estate perspective. So think about that. These are where you can really add value today as an HR professional to your business, is open up these conversations with them. The other thing is, you know, we're on Zoom today, and as a talent acquisition professional, I have had so many interviews over Zoom, over Microsoft Teams. Put together some information for your business managers. Put together some information for your, even for your candidates. How do I conduct an interview over Zoom? How do I conduct a decision over Zoom and make decisions? Now, again, many companies might not be hiring today, but these are the trends that we're going to see moving forward in the future post-pandemic, right? So you want to train your workforce today so that they are ready for tomorrow's workforce. And the last thing is, it's really about university partnerships. You know, again, we may be still trying to figure out how to manage the crisis moments, but this is post-pandemic. Your future talent is sitting in universities. Are they studying what you want them to study? Do you have an opportunity to engage with the universities, with the professors to say, you know what, we want people that understand analytics. We want people that understand emotional intelligence. We want people that understand these different topics. And these are things that you can bring to the table to the universities today, and you start to prep those students for your future talent tomorrow, right? So, so those are the 4 major themes around just global talent actions that I am seeing on my end at a global level. And the last thing is, how are organizations structuring and how are they shifting? We are starting to see a lot of reorgs happening. We're starting to see a lot of realignment. And so think about, does the current structure align to your new business goals? The business is thinking about their different goals. I know, again, I think one of the other speakers talked about an arrow in the dark. Make sure that that is very clear. what are the business goals, and then you can realign and help restructure the organizations. And there are fantastic consultants on the calls today. If you need to pull in consultants to help you with that, absolutely think about that. Organizations are probably going to flatten quite a bit and take out multiple layers, but that just means that you're reshaping also roles within your organization. So these again are trends that we're seeing at a global level. And then the last two pieces is think about succession planning. There is trimming that's happening, right? So organizations are looking at who are our top performers and who are those that maybe are either not in the right positions or, you know, and are possibly going to get impacted, right? So again, succession planning is a critical piece to start to think about today. And then the third thing would be agile working ways. So I don't know about if you are all experiencing this, but we are, as HR professionals on my end, we're starting to experience quick agile meetings, scrum meetings. We are starting to learn how to operate as if we were like in a software development shop. But it's because the business is moving at such a fast pace right now on our end. So we are having to learn how to work in an agile way. So think about these things. Again, these are trends that are happening. And I think it's always good to be aware of what's happening at a global level. I think we have officially opened up a full global scope, at least on my end. I see that there's talent that sits elsewhere that can easily connect with me every day. So, those are things to think about. So that's it from my end. And again, thank you for listening in.
Thank you so much, May. Quite short and brief, but very impactful and future thinking. It gives us a way of starting to understand how the global market is operating. In an African perspective, we're operating in a different dimension, but it does not mean that we cannot be able to adopt to some of these things. Yeah, the situation is the same everywhere in the world, and in Africa, we're still having the same effects. Jobs are being laid off. So it's another opportunity to start thinking of how do we partner with universities, new ways of working, quite impressive in terms of agility, in terms of how you plan and work, and looking in terms of what other features are coming up in terms of workforce planning. There are people who definitely would want to work from home after this pandemic because they'll say, hey, I didn't know I could be able to work quite effectively from home. So let me approach HR and say, can I be working from home? I can be able to be doing my other stuff as long as I meet my targets, which also builds up to the same conversation that Sarah was talking about, performance management conversations. So quite insightful, and thank you so much for taking your time to share with us. We hope you're able to stay with us for the Q&A. I'm sure there's so many questions which will be coming your way. Thank you. I'm going to introduce the next speaker. That is you. Rita Kusi, she comes from Ghana. She's the CEO and senior HR consultant at Keeping You Simply Intact, which stands for KUSI, a HR consulting firm and management provision solution in terms of marketing, and they provide HR audit training, recruitment, outsourcing, and digital marketing. She's also the co-founder and head of operation at Cyrus 360. They host wonderful sessions. I've been able to participate in one of them called hashtag 30 minutes with HR on LinkedIn. So it's a pleasure of welcoming this afternoon Rita all the way from Ghana, and her topic of discussion is a build up to what we've been discussing with May, which is return to work strategy and post-pandemic HR business partnering. Quite an interesting topic, and hopefully we'll be able to gather as much as possible. Over to you, Rita.
Hi, so thank you for the introduction, Joseph. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you.
And so a few months ago, hello? All right, so I find it interesting that a few months ago we were discussing the future of work, and because of COVID-19, now we have been thrown far along the future of work. And this time around, we don't have a choice, right? We've been forced into it. So today I'm discussing return to work strategy and post-pandemic HR business partnering. So I first want to, I'm sure most of us here are HR, human resource professionals. We understand our role within an organization, which is simple, right? Is to align the people to the business objectives. Now, let's talk about the role of HR business partner. HR business partner is pretty much a generalist who works directly with an organization's senior leadership. And they have the same agenda to support organizational goals. The only difference is HR business partners work together with the HR functional teams and also with the managers of the organization. So now I want to talk about returning to work. So on Sunday, in Ghana, we were actually informed that we can return to work, obviously with some restrictions. So I think it posed a bit of a concern to a lot of individuals and also to a lot of HR, because how do you go back to work if you haven't properly prepared, right? So I think returning to work has a lot to do with our performance as HR professionals during the lockdown period. Did we speak with staff? How did we keep them informed and in on the loop? Do they know what they are returning to once they return to work? Have their job responsibilities and the way they work changed? These are all questions that I think HR needs to ask themselves, or employers need to ask themselves before they ask employees to just get up and come to work, because the reality is that the workplace has changed, right? Employees are scared. They may be coming in, but mentally, they're not the same individuals. They have a lot on their minds, all right? Some, again, have even probably taken a pay cut. So they're thinking about whether or not, they would return back to being full salaried employees. So what's HR's role during the post-pandemic period? During the post-pandemic period, if you're still on lockdown, obviously HR is supposed to serve as trusted advisors to senior management and also to management staff. You're supposed to work collectively and leverage on the support of middle management and functional teams. It's not time for HR to work, in its own corner and by themselves. I think it's really time to involve others within the organization who also have that managerial role. It's time for HR to revise organizational policies. It's time for HR to step up employee engagement, especially with the employees who are working from home. Maybe for the first time, they don't even know how to navigate their way. It's time for HR to get consistent and accurate information to employees, not just regarding COVID-19, but also just about the workplace changes, the changes that are taking place. You have to keep employees involved. They cannot be out of the loop on organizational changes. It's time for HR to set clear communication and expectations of employees. What do you expect from them? If they're working from home, have you put the right metrics in place to be able to manage their performance? How do you keep them working? Interesting, I have one employee who actually, she's been working harder working from home than when she was here. So I think it was Sarah that mentioned this. Some employees are actually working, oh no, it was Dixon, because Dixon spoke about working from home. Some employees are actually working harder now from home than when they were working from the office. All right, it's also time for HR to embrace our new digital way of work. Virtual meetings, remote work, I mean, it's fine, it's working for most, I think. It's also time for HR to extend their open door policy to support staff. It's not time for you to brush employees away, but it's time for you to be more open to employee concerns. You have to be more empathetic and understand how your employees are feeling and what they're going through at this time. So if they want to speak with you, it doesn't have to be a face-to-face communication, but we have so many virtual ways now that employers can communicate with employees. And it's also time for HR to support staff with resources. If employees are working from home, Sarah touched upon this. If employees are working from home, do they have adequate data? Do they even have a laptop that they'd be able to use to be able to perform the responsibilities of their jobs? So during the pandemic, these are all things that these are all things that HR need to consider before thinking about returning to work, all right? So how engaged have you been? How informative have you been? How supportive have you been? And how good have you been in terms of working with your other functional leaders? All right, so now let's talk HR post-pandemic. We have to change. HR is not what HR was before. I think the workplace is going to shift drastically, at least for some time, and we have to be able to adapt with the changes, right? So I see HR being more empathetic. I see HR also being more trusting. So empathetic leaders, you know, HR, like I mentioned before, has to be able to understand and know what the employees are going through, especially now when they return to work. They are going to have a lot on their mind. Are you someone that they can come to and speak with? Do you have a department dedicated to your staff's mental health? All right. HR has to serve as trusted advisors to stakeholders. Employers are confused. Board of directors are confused. This is time for HR really to step into that leadership role and be able to guide the organization through what it is going through right now. So we talk a lot about HR business partnering. You heard it a lot last year and previous years. And I think this is really the time for HR, that role to be taken seriously, because now you've been thrown directly into the business in a leadership role. So how are you going to lead the company to come out of what it's going through? HR needs to engage and work collectively with middle managers. I cannot stress that enough. Sarah mentioned that middle managers can actually drive engagement, which is true, because when you think about it, managers work directly with the employees. They don't work directly with HR. So it's not HR that's supposed to communicate directly with the employees, but they're supposed to lead the process through the middle managers, all right? HR post-pandemic needs to be tactful and strategic and not rush everybody back to work. You have to be strategic. Those that are home, that are working, if it's effective, they're performing, why not just keep them working and continue to put the right processes in place? All right, so I did a post on LinkedIn a couple of days ago, just with some key points of things to consider before you ask employees to rush back to the workplace. Shift systems, you may want to put up COVID-19 preventive posters. Obviously, communication is key, and things like that, right? Obviously, you want to also update your policies, right? A lot of your employee manuals, your health and well-being policies, your benefits and leave policies need to be updated. They cannot come back to work with the same policies that you have. And you also need to have a continuity plan and a return to work policy, all right? So continuity plan, how do we move on? You know, we've obviously suffered such a loss. We've gone through so much within these past couple of months. What is the way forward? All right, so staff reorganization. If you have staff working from home, then chances are you may have to reorganize some of your staff before they return to work, all right? The workplace has changed, so it's okay to do this. I spoke a lot last year about the employee experience. I actually had it in my presentation when we went to Dubai to do the presentation. The employee experience, now there's like a spotlight on the employee experience, which is personalizing the workplace experience for every employee. Not all employees work the same, obviously, and you're going to have some employees who embrace this remote work better than other employees, right? So you have to customize certain policies to fit certain employees. They cannot be the same. So the employee experience now seems to be at the center of how the workplace is going to move forward. All right, so we have to continue to embrace digital. Again, some employees may continue to work remotely. They may work better at home. We have to continue to embrace it and just find the right ways to measure performance when they are at home. HR post-pandemic, we joked about HR being counselors. Well, guess what? we are actually counselors at the workplace. You know, that has become a major part of our job, especially now. And then just providing support to employees. If someone needs to talk, you cannot turn them away. They have a valid concern. So it may not be you, but you may want to delegate some kind of a team to serve as counselors within the organization. The workplace obviously is going to be more agile and flexible. The work environment is going to be the same. So we just have to make sure that we find ways around it. And HR post-pandemic obviously has to manage resources. We're going to have limited resources, right? So how effectively are you distributing and managing those resources? We mentioned training programs. New training programs are actually going to have to be developed moving forward, especially around the digital ways of work. So we want to look at new training programs. And last but not least, we have to show concern for the health and well-being of employees at this time, as well as their safety when we return back to work. And I did mention that we would have to most likely update our health and wellness policies, our safety policies, just to meet our new norm. So that's pretty much what I wanted to touch upon, is that before returning to work, we really have to be tactful and strategic and think about the best ways to return to work. What are you doing now as HR while you're home, you know, on lockdown? And when you return to work, what do you plan to do? So I hope this has been insightful for information for you.
Thank you, Rita. Quite informative.
Okay.
And thought sharing in terms of challenging the way we need to operate when we return to work, and also giving us insight in terms of employee experiences and how HR can be able to contribute to the bottom line of the organization once we return back to the organization. It's very, very important. And as I mentioned before, it's a build up to what the other panelists have already discussed, and very informative in terms of saying, finding ways in terms of how we can be able to manage as HR in terms of improving our employee experience, in them being able to perform better. Thank you for that. I would go into inviting the next speaker. He's from Tanzania. He's called Ntangeki Nanshala. Ntangeki Nanshala is a corporate leader. Let me share his screen. He's a corporate leader in Tanzania and the East African market. He's had 15 years of financial experience in the financial sector, having worked as a financial controller and a senior banker in various organizations in Tanzania. With this, he gained skills that are useful in terms of leading him towards entrepreneurship. His skills propelled him in terms of forming up the current entrepreneurship level in terms of becoming an expert in leadership and offering leadership solutions within the Tanzanian and mostly the African market and global at large. So this afternoon, I'm inviting Nshala. Nshala is easier for me to pronounce, to discuss a topic on strategic leadership in the face of adversity. So Ntangeti, are you?
Thank you so much, Joseph.
Okay.
I'll be talking about strategic leadership in these times of adversity. And I want to touch on 3 items. I think one of the main items in these times is communication. Because as leaders, and it doesn't matter whether you are a CEO or the head of a department or just a member of a team, we need to communicate as leaders, because people want to hear from us. COVID-19 has really pushed us out of balance. So our employees want to know what we want to do, what's our future like, what are we planning to do after this. And our customers want to hear from us whether we're still going to survive, whether we are still going to serve them as we used to, or now we are changing the channels of service. We need to communicate to our suppliers, of course. They need to know how we're going to operate, how we're going to work with them as we go forward. We need to communicate because our shareholders still want to hear from us. How is the company going to go? Like how is it going to create value and wealth for them? So communication is going to be very important. In the 12, of course, our employees, they want to hear from us. They are afraid whether they're going to lose their jobs, whether they're going to be relevant anymore in this company. So communication is very important for leaders, and you cannot over-communicate. Keep communicating, keep telling your people what are your plans. Share even the problems that are happening in your company. Tell people the difficulties that you're facing as a leader in running your department or in running the organization. Share with people. People need to know. When you share with people even the bad news, then they know where they stand. They know where you stand, where they know where the company stands. So it's important to communicate, to keep telling people, keep people appraised on what is going on. So I think for any leader, communication is important. That's why I put the photo of our great communicator here, Professor. I know the guys in Kenya probably know him. Those who don't know him, I think it's Professor Lumumba. He's a great communicator. And when I thought about communication, I'm going to find a better communicator than Professor Lumumba. I admire him a lot. So as leaders, we need to communicate. We cannot over-communicate in this situation because people are really afraid. People don't know what's going to happen. Our customers don't know what's going to happen. Our shareholders don't know what's going to happen. So we need to keep them informed. Whatever comes in our mind, we tell them these are the plans, whether in the banking sector, whether in telecoms or insurance. Tell people what's going on. Tell people the difficulties you're going through so that they know. I think that's one of the best ways to make people feel at peace, make people understand what's going on, and make people cooperate and see where they can chip in. And of course, in the future, things are going to change. So if there are goals that you had planned for the 2020 year, I think goals are going to change. So people will want to know what are your new goals. I don't think people are going to change their company visions. I don't know that that should be changed. I think a company vision should be changed. What should be changed is the strategy. The plans can change, but the company vision shouldn't change because of COVID-19. Because COVID-19 is going to last only for probably at most 6 months. That's the way I see it. So the vision of the organization shouldn't change, but the plans can change, the strategies can change, and people can change. So keep the vision alive, but change the goals, short-term goals, change your current plans, change even the staffing. I know most of you guys here are HR people, but probably this is the time also to change the kind of people you need in your teams. It's going to really reorganize yourself. It's going to help us help the organization become even better and more productive. And the second point for me, I think, is prepare. Keep preparing. The COVID-19, the lockdown, the whole this period, probably 2-3 months, is going to give us an opportunity that we have never had for many years. You know, many years people are working. They're working from day 1 to day 2 to day 10 to all 365 days a year. People are working, moving from one meeting to another, moving from one customer to another, moving from one technique to another. So people never got time to relax and probably slow down. So this is a time where we have now been forced to slow down. So how do you use this time? I think it's time now to prepare for the future. Recently, I saw news from Etihad, and Etihad are trying to use this time to refurbish the whole fleet. There are more than 200 planes in that, trying to go into checking their engines, checking their seat covers, changing, shampooing everything, so that when the skies are open, they can have their planes as if they're brand new planes, and people are going to enjoy the services. So I think for us in the corporate world, we need to use this time to prepare. Now go through our policies and see whether we still need all the things in our policies. Go through our regulations and see whether we need all these things in our regulations. Let's go through our products, whether you're a bank, or you're in insurance, or you're in any other industry. Go go through all these products and see that there are some things that can be changed, can be improved on, can be trickled a bit, so they can become more relevant and more useful to our customers. So prepare, keep preparing, use this time to even sharpen. Now I'm talking to people who are already, of course, here listening to this webinar. So they're trying to sharpen their minds. Probably I'm preaching to the converted. Fantastic, but let's tell even our friends who are not here today that we need to sharpen our minds, because this is the time when things are going to really change. Our jobs are going to change. Our organization structures are going to change. So where are you going to be after Corona pandemic period? Are you going to still be the same guy that used to be, or you're going to change? Your role might change. So we change. Like Peter Drucker once said, you know, the only skill that we really need in the future is the skill of learning new skills. So this is a skill that we need to sharpen now, learning new skills. Probably in future, the roles you're having will change. People in sales will change. People in accounting, things definitely are going to change. So prepare. Set up budgets. I know budgets are going to be affected a lot, but the training budgets shouldn't be changed a lot. I think the training budget should be enhanced. This is the time to enhance the training budget, because in the future, people will need to know new things. People need to learn new things. People need to become multi-skilled to continue to be relevant in the market. So I guess the training budget, I think people in HR, you are guys in the front line, make sure your training budgets are not cut just because the productivity has gone down because of the pandemic. Actually, we need to have a bigger training budgets so that we can refurbish our army. We can refurbish the human resource can be refurbished and become a better army. So I think preparations are going to be important in these times. And the third point and my last point will be trying to dig down, learn the trends, because strategies and strategic leadership and strategic thinking is about learning the trends. It's about learning what's going to happen in the future. It's about predicting the future, something like that. So dig deep. Don't rely on the only something that comes on the news, on the CNN, on BBC or on TV. No, try to dig deep with the data. Try to learn real trends that are happening. Try to listen, because if you're going to win in this market, you're supposed to be a person who's sharp enough to learn and come up with new novel ideas. And novel ideas are in the data. Novel ideas are in a lot of this noise. If you can, from all this noise, you can catch an insight. One insight can really change your company. So this is a time to really learn, to really listen, to really go deep and try to listen to different people and dig deeper to understand how the market is going, how the market is reacting to all these changes that are happening in the world. So it's time to learn a lot, dig deep, collect information, collect the data. I heard, was May, talking about collecting data. This is the time to collect a lot of data. So that when you make decisions, your decisions are informed, not decisions that are pushed because of the emotions that people have because of this pandemic. Leaders are supposed to be people who are calm, who can use their data, the information at hand, and think a lot before they make decisions. So those are the three key areas that I think strategic leaders are supposed to use and to become more effective as we go post-pandemic. So communicate, prepare, and to use data to do any information discussions and decisions in the future. Thank you.
Fabulous, Nanshala, quite informative. And we love that you come from the financial sector and you understand the importance of data in making prediction and informed decisions. So thank you for sharing the information. And one of the key highlights that I picked is that we should communicate to our employees, communicate to our stakeholders to let them know where we stand, and also give this particular time as a time to re-strategize, to plan for the coming out of this pandemic and planning ahead. And also, as May said, and now as Nanshala has mentioned, leading with data, using data to make informed decisions. Thank you so much, Nanshala. It's wonderful to hear from you. Over to my next speaker, Tureame. I hope I've pronounced it well, Arun. Arun is joining us this afternoon from Kigali, Rwanda. He's currently serving as the head of capacity building and business development for Rwanda Human Resources Management Organization. Harun has experience of more than 16 years working as a head of HR in various organizations, NGOs, insurance, and banking. And the Rwanda Human Resources Management Organization of Rwanda is there to put capacity and develop capacity for human resource managers and professionals in Rwanda. He's standing in this afternoon to give us a topic of discussion on performance evaluation in times of crisis. Are you there, Arun?
So there are some of the challenges with us, and we want to share with you some of these challenges that have been raised. And for those of you who are practicing HR from different countries, you could also, learn from these challenges and see how you can overcome them. So what we have seen that some of the staff are not able to continue working from home, because if you consider, for example, staff that are working in the assembly lines in the factories, they cannot be able to work from home because their work is really physical. They have to be in the factory and work. So we have now those workers, those staff that are at home, so they're not doing much. So how we do the performance evaluation for staff who are not working? Maybe they had worked for 2 months, so the other 2 months they're not working. So the challenge is, how shall we evaluate such staff? Other challenges include staff that are not able to work remotely because they don't have computers. So if you look at the African setting, it's different from the developed world where everybody has a computer, has a laptop, has internet. So we are also in a situation where some of the companies, organizations based in the countryside, or even in the urban setting, they don't have sufficient internet or sufficient computers, laptops. So you find that this is a challenge because some of this stuff, even if they're able to work from home, they don't have the tools to help them work from home. So we had a Zoom conference recently, and some of the managers were raising these challenges, that staff are willing to work, but they don't have the tools. So some staff were not trained to work remotely. So connecting on webinars, on the various conference is a need for them. So how do you evaluate this staff? Because they are not able to continue working if their work involves interacting with others through a session. So they are not able to connect, and we don't sometimes even have people who are helping them to do that. So if they are not able to do the work, will you appraise them? How will you appraise them? Because they're not able to execute their work because they don't have the skills like this, where they're supposed to be working from. They're used to working from the home office, rather the office environment where they're connected. So, and there is an IT department helping them to do all the work. So, of course, as my colleagues shared, some of the staff get disrupted from the home environments. You're trying to work, you have some kids to take care of, you have other people talking to you, so you have also disruptions from the work environment at home. So staff not able to do their work because there are those disruptions. How do you evaluate them? So that's a challenge that is already there. They also have another fundamental issue. Supervisors may not be able to assign tasks online. You see, we are used to, and most of the companies are used to environments where instructions are given physically in the office. So you go approach your supervisor, tell him you're supposed to do this report, you submit it on this date. So this time around, supervisors don't have that physical contact. Or even sometimes if you are sending an email, you send an email, the way people even interpret, because so some environments, when you write, when you send an instruction on email, you have to follow up with a call on phone and make sure that the person has understood the expectations. So we don't have that kind of communication going on between the managers and supervisors. And some managers are not even able to communicate in a written form. They are better at communicating orally, where you just tell somebody, do this, do this, do this. So our middle-level managers, which was an issue that was raised, were sometimes trained to give instructions through writing or through written communication. So let me come out to the HR department. I said I'm talking a more practical point of view. So for the HR department, in some cases, if you look at an organization, the performance targets that were set, they were set on paper. So they are in physical papers, they don't have software records. So now it comes to appeal. If this lockdown is extended and you don't have the targets set in a soft form, how will you be able to communicate to the staff? So you have to go back to the physical files and now make sure that now you start recording each of those performance targets in a soft form, and then thereafter you start now communicating to the staff. So that's already becoming a challenge, and we have quite a number of organizations that have got most of their performance targets set in physical papers. They are filed in the office, and sometimes now, because the HR also is in their homes, they are in the lockdown, they are not able to access those files. So how do you now start the appraisal? Suppose the lockdown is extended. So that proves a big challenge. So and then other questions will be, how will the appraisal be done for staff who cannot work remotely because they cannot work when in office? So for those staff that we said, they work for assigned staff, cashiers in the bank, how will they be appraised? Because if they're not in the office, they're not able to work. How will you appraise them as HR or as line managers? The staff who are not, so how would you appraise staff who are not able to work remotely because they lack a stable internet? In some environments, the internet is not stable. Somebody starts working on a report, then is not able to complete it. Then some other inputs he has to collect from an internet, is not able to report because of the unstable internet. Now this person is supposed to accomplish the tasks on time. So how would you appraise this staff who has not been able to accomplish the tasks because of the logistical issues? So staff are not able to work from home because they cannot use technology. For example, the webinar, Zoom, WebEx, they don't use that. So how we appraise those staff that have not been able to perform? For example, the managers that are supposed to be now communicating to groups of staff they supervise through webinars and not able to use the technology, how will you appraise those managers? Staff who are performers. Now we have a situation in some companies, staff are not really good performers, and sometimes they like to hide behind pretexts. Now this time around they tell you we're not able to work because my computer had a virus and nobody's there to fix it. IT is not there to fix it. Sometimes the phones are switched off. The supervisors sometimes are not there. Now this managing poor performing is also a big challenge. Now, let's come to the actual appraisal. As Sarah put it, you need performance conversations. Now, when it comes to appraisal, and we are supposed to bring together the supervisor and the supervisee to talk about, to go through their performance, the performance of the staff. How are you going to this performance conversation when people are working remotely? So, and some managers are not even able to communicate, to organize like webinars to have these kind of discussions. So how do supervisors coach and mentor their direct reports? Now, we imagine a supervisor, a line manager has given tasks to a direct report, but this is now the direct report is working remotely. So how will he mentor and coach this staff to ensure that the staff understands the tasks and where need be, where even some kind of direct support is required? how will this direct support come in when staff are working remotely? So these are some of the practical challenges that we are likely to meet during the performance appraisal if the lockdown continues. Now, another important question to ask ourselves, if the lockdown is extended, how will HR set performance targets? We have already seen that some companies, the performance targets that were set are in physical files, they're not in soft copies. So they won't be able to access them. They even won't be able to send these targets to the individual staff. So setting performance targets will remain a challenge if COVID-19 is extended. So we also have, when you're setting performance targets, it's not a question of sending targets, but you have also to engage the supervisor and the supervisee in some kind of conversation to agree on these targets. Now, how will the supervisor and the line manager interact when both of them are working remotely? This is a challenge that we need to look at if we're to do performance targets now during COVID-19, if it's extended. Also, what we have started witnessing is that some companies are changing their strategies. For instance, we are here in Rwanda, we're looking at some of the banks. They have started now developing products that go with the COVID-19. For example, COVID-19 loans, to help people that are going through challenges, to help business that are struggling. So these are new products, and before you set targets, your staff must understand this change in strategy. So how will the new strategy and the new products that are developed to line to the market be communicated to the staff before we set the performance targets? Of course, there's also a possibility that some of the companies might do restructuring and shed off some of the jobs. Now, if some of the jobs are shed off and we continue with working remotely, it means that some of the tasks may be shifted to the remaining staff. How will these tasks be communicated? So these are some of the things that we need to start looking at as HR, how we're going to realign the performance targets to the new realities that we're going through because of COVID-19. So what we had a discussion, we had a conference call recently with the HR managers, and what they're saying is that now there's need to centralize all performance management data. That data kept in hard copies for organizations must be put in a soft copy, and then these soft copies should be sent to all the supervisors and the line managers, so that each of them keeps a soft copy. And this would allow the supervisor and the supervisee to continue the discussions, to continue tracking performance, because there's an issue of tracking performance, because each of them has got a copy of the performance targets set. They're also saying that there's need to train our staff on conference technologies, how to use WebEx, Zoom. This will enable managers and supervisees to communicate and share performance expectations and resolve performance issues that arise. So now it means actually that the staff development plan for most companies will now change to include now these new technologies that are coming on board, which are essential for staff to perform their work. Also, what we managers are saying is that staff will need to be given laptops instead of desktops. In fact, this came from one of the organizations when we were discussing yesterday, that they had been previously buying desktops for their staff, but he said how the organization has resolved that each staff will have a laptop, so that should the current lockdown continue, they'll be able to continue working from home using laptops. Also, what managers are telling us that HR will need to train supervisors on written communication. What we find out, as I said earlier, is that some of the managers are not really able to communicate in written form. They are good at oral instructions, but when it comes to packaging the oral instruction into a formal form, it becomes a challenge. So training line managers on communication will be very essential. In the case the company strategy changes, it's important the managers have stressed that the managing director or the CEO, whatever the name is, with HR, should be able to communicate the changes in the strategy so that people are able now to understand the expectations. It's also very important because as we talk about performance evaluations, the staff also need to be emotionally connected to the organization, and they need to be emotionally stable. So as a result, what some of the HR managers told us was that it's very important that the managing director, the CEO or director general, whoever is the head of the institution, to communicate, to prepare communication to all staff, telling them the strategic direction of the company and the company expectations, the company status, organization status. Some of the companies are going through financial difficulties. For example, will there be redundancies? Because some people are asking themselves, shall we be laid off because of the performance of our companies? Now, if we start performance discussions or performance appraisal, when somebody doesn't know whether he has a job or not, that's going to be a challenge. So it's very important to package communication and regularly, at least probably every week, from the managing director and the head of HR to staff, telling them the status of the organization, where the organization is going, whether there are changes in the strategy, whether there are financial difficulties, so that the staff are kept abreast of what is happening in the organization. It's also very important that the staff should be given a forum to communicate their issues. Because if you start just appraisal without staff raising the appraisals and you don't take care of them, you won't be emotionally connected to the staff. We had also talked about poor performance, and for poor performance, we said that it's very important that the supervisors keep engaging them, and they have to communicate to them, and we have to be sure that the measures we take normally when people are not on physically in the office are also taken for people who are working remotely, because unless it has any performance challenge, in which case it has to be resolved, we cannot let poor performance continue because somebody is working remotely.
Thank you so much, Arun.
Yes.
I would have to put you on hold for now because of the time. I can see the relevant notes which are remaining. I would want you to cover them during the Q&A so that we're able to allow the other speaker to also give us his insights, and also so that we don't also lose time of track. So thank you so much. I like the aspect whereby you brought in the challenges currently covered within the market in Kigali, and those are quite very pertinent in terms of what is happening in other countries, even here in Kenya. So very, very crucial, and especially when it comes to performance management. We might be talking about performance management while we are in this current pandemic, and we may not be having the synopsis in terms of what our employees are undergoing. So I'll leave you to answer the notes, the key notes towards the end, and they are quite informative, and I highly appreciate your presentation. Sorry for cutting you short because of time. So on to the next presenter, Nabil, who is the last presenter. Nabil Senyonga is from UAE. He's an accelerate business growth consultant and facilitator in UAE. Nabil has held senior leadership position in L&D with leading hospitality groups, and now consult as a facilitator with Middle East and Africa-based clients in diverse range of industries. Nabil lives in Dubai, where he moved after spending time from Egypt and Uganda. He has over 20 years of experience in leadership positions, especially in L&D. This evening, Nabil will be discussing with us a topic on organization readiness during pandemic and post-pandemic times. So over to you, Nabil. If you can be able to also keep it brief so that we are able to share some of the questions which you already raised by the clients before.
No problem. Thank you so much, Joseph. Thank you so much, and good to meet with you all. I'll go straight to the presentation to, sorry about the time, just 1 second. I'll be talking about some emerging trends in times of crisis, and the reason why I'm coming in last because of my vast experience, and here is my vast experience where it comes from. I've been through 3 recessions actually, 1980s, the 1990s, and 2000. I've been through 2 Gulf Wars in the 1990 and 2001. I've seen the dot-com bubble. I have been through the financial crisis of 2007. I've seen the AIDS impact, SARS, MERS, Ebola, H1N1, and now COVID-19. But unlike any of the other, as you can see, I don't know whether you consider me a lucky person or an unlucky person. I just come at the end of the Generation X. I consider that every time one of these crises has happened, it has helped change my career and propel me moving forward. And actually the one of 2001 with the dot-com bubble is the one that got me into HR, and I've never looked back since. One of the things that got me to recognize working here in the Middle East, primarily the economies actually are based on, it's an expat-driven economy. It's unlike other places like where my esteemed panelists have been talking, where you have, as we say, a single culture kind of approach, or the market is led by the nationals. Here it's primarily a mix. And the HR has been more or less doing one job. I don't want to generalize it, but primarily it has been the hiring and firing of people. It has not been really driving the process forward. So whenever there's a crisis, as you heard a little bit earlier, stop the training budget, stop the marketing budget, send people home, and that was it. But unlike these other crises where there was still some industries were working, this time actually almost all industries or everything has come to a standstill. And this really wants to get HR to start questioning if we exist and why, and how do we manage or respond to these crises in order to be more proactive than reactive. So there are some questions that they need to start looking at. Some of the questions that I prepared that I was able to look at various companies, how did they go about it, and based on sharing and asking with my esteemed colleague, at least from the region. Basically, one of the things we need to look at, can the company operate with 25% or greater absenteeism? If illnesses is causing high absenteeism, are people actually cross-trained? And I really appreciated what Mr. Nchala was saying, that training needs to happen. I find that really rarely people are cross-trained or they can able to perform multiple duties. Now we are looking at people who have been put in a situation where they needed to work remotely. And in terms of what KPMG has been talking, looking at the future of businesses, a lot of people actually like to work in terms of freelancing. So this trend is actually going to continue more. It's not actually going to become less. So maybe as a result of working in this kind of environment has got people to start thinking, how do we work remotely? Is there enough infrastructure in place? Is there an escalation procedure? Do we have a crisis management team in place who could actually be called upon or can be actually to react or be proactive in terms of what is expected of them? What procedures are actually put in place in case, like we're looking at these days at viruses? Is there anything that is being taken care of in terms of taking care of people and decontaminated, it's taking care of the air conditioning? People need to know that they are feeling safe wherever they're going to work. What is needed is that for any organization, they need to recognize how they're going to keep the lights on should this situation continue moving forward. They need to look at 2 key areas. What are the key business functions that are needed to keep the business going? People who need to definitely be at the place of work, and those who can actually, we can start putting them to work remotely straight away. What are going to be the key roles and activities and skill set that can be as well identified in order to get people who are going to be working in either case, whether remotely or from the place of work, they actually have a very clear indication of what is, what's going to be their role, what's going to be required of them, and whether they can actually apply their skill set to really get the job done. Some of the things that have been coming back again and again and again is the role of leadership. These are the lessons that have come up from most of the crisis. Are the leadership there? Are they strong enough to provide the direction and give that confidence and resilience we can actually pull through it? Or has it always been the question of, okay, sorry, let's cut the story short, stop marketing, stop training, put people on double shift, fire the rest of the people, and so forth? Do the leaders actually know how to contextualize the issue? In this case, it's the coronavirus. Do they actually communicate? Do they actually give the right answers? Do they actually set people's mind at ease? When people, the peer-to-peer are interacting with each other, since there's going to be a lot of Zoom, whether it's Zoom or whether it's Microsoft Teams or any of the other tools that are being used, how is the interaction actually happening? Is it rather jumping straight, okay, here's what works that needs to be done, or is it like, let's check on you? Because remember, people are being put under pressure when they are actually working from home. They need to know that, yes, I can balance myself between my family and what work is needed. So that intentional peer-to-peer interaction needs to happen to ensure this kind of relaxation or the confidence that we're in this together. What's going to be the team's guidelines when they're actually working together as passing on the information of how are we going to work together, whether remotely or not, how are we going to communicate, and as also Mr. Nchala said here, how are we going to set the performance? How is it going to be very clear for everyone so that they know what is expected of them? And then at the end of the day, we need to make sure that there's enough flexibility for people who are going to be working remotely to balance out between their work-life balance. And this flexibility, if it's not taken care of, is going to be challenging. The trends that are coming back up again and again and again is how are we going to engage people? How are we going to create actually the experience? The employee experience now, it's becoming a section of its own. Just as much as we're creating a customer experience, we need to create an employee experience, and that is really clearly need to be taken care of. What are the new technology that we are making use of right now, or are we creating any that is going to allow the work to move smoother? As well as the HR software, we are seeing that even though the HR software has been evolving, it is still being used as a glorified, at least, I don't know with my other esteemed colleagues or in the other regions, but at least in this region, it's just a glorified Excel sheet. The HR software is not really being used to its maximum potential, even though it is actually online. There's going to be quite a quick shift to artificial intelligence to get the job done. And for that to happen, we need to look at the generation shifts, because you're having some Generation X, which are slowly going to start retiring probably soon, and then you're going to have to replace them with the millennium. How is actually that going to be done with Generation Z as well, that are actually coming in, who do not like to be led? So the work remotely is going to become more and more looked or sought after than what is happening right now. The trends that we're going to be looking at, how it's going to be moving to, we're going to look from moving to a collective approach. Yes, teamwork is definitely appreciated, but people actually want more a personalized one-to-one approach and experience. We're going to move from a nice-to-have technology to a major transformational approach. We're going to look at moving from slow to fast, how would I say it? From a slow to a fast tool of methodology of work to even faster using artificial intelligence. The performance management, which has been mentioned, which has been plagued by prejudice and biases in quite a lot of area, so now it's going to be evidence-based and data analytic as well, very strongly. Instead of having a rigid hierarchical organization to an open, transparent network type, whereas you're going to have a matrix kind of organization, globalization is really going to come in handy. And as we can see, one example here where we have people from different regions coming together to talk about a subject, this is going to also to be happening at work in the same more or less approach. Instead of big long-term plans, yes, they're definitely very good, but we need to experiment with some other agile methodology to see what we can get right now and plan the next step ahead. the boss is no longer going to be pleased, and we're going to be looking more on what's going to be a meaningful employee experience. Because remember, the work remotely is actually, the way I see it, and based on a lot of my esteemed colleagues as well from around the region here, is here to stay, because there's a lot of push for freelance kind of approach to work as opposed to a contractual approach. What I would like to get people to walk away with, because yes, there's a lot of information that has been shared. There's a lot of maybe contradicting information out there, and there's a lot of things that are going to go back to work. We're not going to go back to work. I'm going to keep my job. I'm not going to keep my job. Usually at the end of any training sessions, or for me as a facilitator, when I take people through any sessions, I always give them like a small action plan as a takeaway, which is a stop, start, continue. And for this particular webinar, I'm going to make a little twist on it. What are the thoughts and the behavior that I may be having that may be negative, or maybe getting me to think in a different, and this is what we need to stop, and we're going to stop by challenging them. This is where I need to challenge, am I going to have a job? To, yes, of course I'm going to have a job. How am I going to make myself useful? What am I going to be doing? And that will enable me actually to be able to focus more on what I need to have in terms of thoughts. And in that way, my behavior will actually be reflected in the same way. So even if I may have had any negative behaviors, I'm going to be challenging them, and I'm going to be able to focus on the positive behaviors. At the beginning, I shared with you that slide, which was talking about my challenges of going through various crises. But again, I believe it has made me stronger. It's actually helped me propel my career. I always look at any crisis with not just a pinch of optimism, but like with a whole lot of optimism. There's a lot out there that actually can be done. There's a lot that we can do together. There's a lot that we can support each other. And this situation is actually making us more aware that how we need to pull together, unlike any of other situations that we have seen before. With that, I'd like to say thank you, and I yield the floor back to Joseph so we can go to, I guess, any question and answer that may have been raised or will be raised from the attendees. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nabil. That was quite insightful and also thought-provocative in terms of how do we challenge ourselves in terms of adapting to the current scenario. And I like your ending closing to say we should change, we should stop our thoughts and behaviors towards looking at challenges and start focusing with them in terms of how do we make ourselves better. And I like the point where you mentioned HR leaders cannot wait for crises to happen so as to develop strategies of how to react within those strategies. So it's upon us to be forward thinking in terms of, now that we have this crisis, what if this pandemic proceeds, as Arun had mentioned? What if we pass this pandemic? How are we going to manage? And these are some of the questions which I'm seeing being thrown to me as we enter into the Q&A session. So I'm only going to ask for like 2 minutes or 3 maximum in terms of some of the questions that I have. And I'll start presented in terms of allowing Dixon to answer one of the questions which was posted on the group chat. And the question was, how effective can one manage meetings and time differences? I think this is someone who is looking at time different zones when you might who are working in different locations. Are you there, Dixon?
Yeah, thank you so much, Joseph. I think before the pandemic, we have always had this problem of working in cross time zones from all over the world. Again, many approaches have been taken by those approaches is to find out the time that is overlapping within these 2 zones or couple of zones. Find out a kind of a uniform time where these people can work together. You know, where maybe it is 4 p.m. in one end and it is 8 a.m. in another place, and there's 12 noon in another place. Find out a time that is uniform for everybody that we can work together. And from there, meetings should be reserved for such period, and the meeting should be straight to the point. And also in some parts of the world, the issue of flexible working the days that some people have dedicated some days for meeting. And for those days of meeting, people in a unique time zone will always start their day either later or earlier. I've had meetings where people in the US are speaking to us by 2 a.m. And I have meetings at another time when the people in the US are speaking to us at 11 midnight. It's something that has to do with finding out the days dedicated to meeting and making sure that we also utilize the time that is uniform for everybody when it is comfortable. And then that way we can actually deal with working from locations where we don't have the same time zone. I know that some of my colleagues might have other suggestions or perspective to share from different time zones. Over to you, the rest of the panelists.
I do work with a virtual team, and I sit in the US. I have people that sit in India, London, Europe. So what we do is we just agree that I have to wake up early, and so I usually do that. Or if I need to catch my team in India, I'll stay up a little later and catch them online later, which is their morning. So, but usually we're able to find a really good time frame right up in the morning time. And then we do a lot of virtual work through Teams, Microsoft Teams, and a lot of emails. But we do a quick touch point as well. I would say maybe 2 or 3 times a week, even if it's just a quick 15-minute hit. What are we doing? What are we focused on? What are our challenges? And again, it goes back into the very agile working environments that we're having to shift into just to be able to manage our global workforce. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you, May, for that. It definitely helps. To the next question, I would throw this to Sarah. And the question is, which main policies should HR be critical about to ensure it is revised or introduced post-COVID? So which main policies should HR be critical about to ensure it is revised or introduced post-COVID? Over to you, Sarah. Is Sarah there?
Yes. That is the policy that we need to revise, the policy on online meetings. I think, and this one can be actually guidelines, because right now, many people, and I think Aaron and a few of the other speakers have alluded to it, especially here in the African context, if they are callers from Africa, you do understand that Africans are very community-based as a culture, so we love face-to-face meetings and coming together and everything. In fact, some people say a lot of time is wasted there. So producing guidelines, and I think when I was working with Aaron and his team and other organizations in Rwanda, I wrote a lot of guidelines around meetings because in different cultures and even within East Africa, you can see the Kenyans and Rwanda and maybe you go to Tanzania, and I ran teams in 5 continents. I can tell you for sure, if you haven't put in some guidelines, you could be just focused so much on why the meeting is not taking off or it's not doing what you want it to do, and you do meetings because this becomes a very important aspect of remote working. So, and when I worked remotely, the first document that landed in my email was guidelines on how I conduct myself around meetings, either with a client or with the team online, and it really helped. So I think that is something that HR or managers can sit and draft. I also think working guidelines for on-site workers, because let us look at the health pandemic. I mean, I've been to some on-site meetings and everything. I still see small rooms full of workers and everything, and I just say it's very difficult for me to go into that type of meeting space because of the social distance, especially here in Kenya. And so we will have to relook at guidelines for on-site workers and making those explicit, because just assuming that people will know because the government has said, I think doesn't really help. We need to have policies around remote and fluid workforce. So we are going to see new contracts coming up. We are going to see squads and fluid workforce and using more independent consultants to do 0-hour contract jobs. So how do we, what's the policy around that, and contracting or recontracting a former permanent staff into that, or people who are moving into consulting, or furloughed workers who are going for indefinite leave until things show up. How do you return to work? We spoke about a return to work policy. I think also a policy around flexible working, which can include things like job shares as well. So instead of people losing jobs, you can actually say, Sarah and Mariah want to share a job. Sarah will do afternoons and Mariah will do mornings. So again, you can introduce, and we had a lot of these policies. I remember when I was doing this in Europe. And so maybe these are things, especially here in the African context, we can start looking at as well, embedding into our policies. Having shift working, because believe you me, for me it helped, especially I was bringing up kids and I was like, and I put in the Q&A, having staggered days. So somebody starts early, maybe at 4 a.m. I'd like to start at 10 a.m., you know, and that means my finishing time will be later than the person who started at 4 a.m. and whatever. And so you just have to be very creative during this period, but this has to be embedded around your policy and the company culture as well. We will have to reorder the order of employee relations or policy around that, and especially policies on employee assistance. Because there are some genuine cases that will come through, but there are also, you will find, as you always find in HR, those people who just want to take advantage of any situation. So how do you deal with that? So having a policy at least around employee assistance can really help, so that not one employee has so much assistance and others don't have. And how do you do that? And then finally, maybe looking at protection of customers and protection of employees. While in the office, like sanitizers in Kenya, it's becoming very critical to have gloves, sanitizers, masks. And so those have to also be embedded. Maybe in certain roles, you say it is part of policy that you must come to work, even post-COVID, with a certain gear to protect our customers because you're frontline, or to protect your fellow employees and things like that. And then finally, have a guideline or a hotline for gender violence. Now I'm seeing organizations helping with that, or counseling hotlines and whatever. And there's a policy that guides, you know, when you're being harassed, because now people are working from home, that becomes their office. So some of these things might become, or cross over to become, our problems. So how do we deal with that, especially if you're not skilled or qualified to counsel and whatever? So do you have a hotline where you can signpost employees? Is there a policy that guides if I'm being harassed, or if this has happened to me during this period and I'm alone, how do I deal with it? So I think those are the policies that we want to start looking at, and maybe I can allow the other speakers to chip in.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Quite informative, and it actually covered some of the questions which were asked, like which are the trainings which people should look into in terms of coming off this particular pandemic. Which trainings should we focus on? Customer service is one of the key areas. The next question I would do to throw in would be to Rita. And Rita, the question: reinstating a terminated staff or recontracting of employee to normalcy contractual terms. How would we go about that as HR?
Well, I think when you are reinstating a contract staff or reinstating any staff, first of all, you have to review your policy as it states relating to employees who are terminated. And I think you also have to keep in mind the Labor Act. What does it say about contractual staff? That's pretty much it, if you ask me. But obviously, I wouldn't know the reason why the employee would be terminated. You also have to obviously keep that in mind, right? And make sure that you also speak with the managers of the employee, the immediate supervisors. Is this an employee that they would even want to have returned to work? You have to evaluate and review the employee's past performance. Is he somebody or she somebody that you would want to reinstate? So these are all factors that you would have to keep in mind before you reinstate the employee. But most importantly, you have to check the labor contracts as it relates to your country or your state.
Thank you so much. That's very informative, and it's one of the questions which has been asked in many platforms. Do we make our own decisions based on companies' performance and revenue collections, or do we look to what the government is saying? do we abide to the labor laws? So it's quite a thorny question which is coming up. Thank you so much for that. It's important to ensure we maintain according to what the labor laws are stating. The next question I would want to throw would be to Nanshala, and this is more of a financial one. And someone asked, in terms of risk, can an organization decide to increase salaries to those in high risk or frontline officers? Nanshala, are you there? If he's not there, I'll throw it to Nabil.
No, I'm there.
Oh, you're there? Okay.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Can I repeat the
Yes,
question or are you okay? Okay.
I think
Okay.
employers need to look into really assisting people who are in risky situations. I don't know whether it will be increasing their salaries, because that could be having a lot of implications. But I think people can be given some allowances. It depends if you're working in a hospital in this case. I think they need to be motivated in somehow given more risk allowances if they're working in places like those. So I think it would be a good thing to give people more better allowances.
Awesome. Thank you for that insight. I definitely think it's something to consider, especially them putting their lives on the front line. The next question will be to Arun. Arun touched a lot in terms of performance, and I would want to ask you perhaps to give us an insight in terms of, in the event that the lockdown is prolonged due to COVID-19, how will performance of their staff? Reference to staff working remotely.
Sorry, you said how will they come again? I missed that.
Yes. How will companies evaluate the performance of their staff? How will companies evaluate the performance of their staff?
Yeah, thank you. I think, as I said earlier, the most important thing now is to ensure that HR working with the line managers communicate the performance expectations. It's very critical. We noted there are some companies where performance expectations are not communicated. So it's important that the HR works with line managers to do performance expectations right now, so that when time comes to evaluation, staff will have already gotten their performance expectations. The second thing to do is for HR now to do the training of line managers to ensure that they are able to do performance evaluation remotely. They're able to perform performance conversations remotely, and that involves training them on the use of the modern technologies, the apps we're using like Zoom, WebEx, and to prepare them to do this kind of thing, to be able to do performance evaluations. That's what I would say.
Thank you so much. And it actually rounds up what you had already covered during your presentation. My last question would be to Nabil. Is it advisable to declare on leave, no leave for staff resuming from 3 weeks lockdown? And I saw this being thrown on memes around here. So is it advisable to declare no leave for staff resuming after 3 weeks of lockdown, if not 3 months?
Sorry, but I'm not quite getting what you mean by declaring a no leave. I don't quite understand.
No leave, no giving leaves to employees once they return back to work, because we've been currently on lockdown.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see I remember now the meme is like, what do you mean you've been on a long holiday? Yeah, I see where that's what it's coming from. You see, honestly, if there are any companies that are going to be dealing with such kind of approach, then it puts into question the kind of culture that exists in that organization, because we are dealing with unusual situation and these are unusual times. So there is certainly, they need to be some flexibility in terms of the HR policies and what we are actually looking at. My esteemed colleagues who are more into HR like Sarah and so forth could maybe shed some light into that one. But personally, from my perspective, I'll definitely say no, it shouldn't be looked at from that perspective. So maybe Sarah would, as a policy writer, maybe she can add on from that point.
think on this one, I'm not muted, right?
No.
Yes, we can
Okay,
hear
so
you.
you can hear me. Yes, I think on this one, I'll go with my colleagues, and I think I would say no.
I'll leave it to that. Dixon, you want to chip in?
Let me just, yeah, I
Or
want to
is
chip
Arun?
in.
Yes.
Aaron,
Aaron,
yes.
maybe you can
Aaron,
perspective.
Yes.
Aaron, yes. I mean, the situation is unusual. We HR policies never provided for COVID-19 or a crisis like this. So you find that a leave of this type was never provided for. So what? And the labor law in most countries actually never provided for this kind of crisis. So in such a situation, I would say it's important that the HR sits with the line managers to tell them that they should not give leave to people who have already been in COVID-19 because they have not been working. But because of some of the legal implications that might be involved, it's also important to run that proposal. They have what we call labor inspectors. Probably in other countries, they have also people representing the Minister of Labor in the districts or provinces. So it's also very important to clear that issue legally, so that you don't have employees that might claim legally we never took annual leave. We went for COVID-19, which was an unforeseen circumstance. So yes, I agree with my colleagues. We shouldn't give leave on top of leave, but that should be run with the labor office to avoid some kind of legal litigations.
Can I also add to that as well?
Yes, Rita.
So I think it depends on the language, right? This is where communication actually comes into play. Some employees were actually asked to take paid leave or unpaid leave. So now again, you have to go back to the Labor Act and look at what days are allocated, what amount of days is that employee supposed to receive? Have they exhausted it? Because if they've exhausted it, then obviously it's an understanding between you and that employee that, listen, while you were out, you used your leave days. But then it's also up to you to also be compassionate, right? Because we all know that these are not conventional times. So these are all things that I think when you are updating your policies, you need to factor in. In the cases of a crisis, are you going to ask employees to exhaust their leave and then throughout the year, they won't be, they won't, what do you call it, have any more leave time that they can use if in cases of emergency or if they want to take vacation. So I think, yeah, moving forward, these are all things that we have to factor into our policy. But it goes back to the Labor Act and what it says as well.
Thank you so much. And there's so many questions which have already been asked. And I know we are pressed of time and we are beyond the time that was allotted to us. But thank you so much for the sharing of your insights. It's been very informative. Some of the questions, even myself, have been struggling to think, now how do we approach certain areas when it comes to performance, leave, and all that. So this is quite informative. And these are some of the questions which are being asked all over the world. And how we're able to manage them is very important in terms of understanding what other peers, professionals, and consultants are talking about it. So to end this meeting, I would want to give you 1 minute to just give one last minute advice as we end. And with that, we'll be able to conclude the session. So I'll start with Dixon to give us his parting shot in terms of way forward post pandemic, or if we have prolonged a pandemic. Over to you, Dixon.
Okay.
You're
I
on mute.
want to say, well, for HR professionals, it's time to put on our thinking, cap, and know that the employees are relying on us for support. This is a time we drive humanity. We drive performance through humanity. It's not a time that you take a big stick and they're knocking on the head of every employee. People are going through trauma. There's a lot of things going through in their life. This employee are the one that help us to build the company to where we are. So let's put our thinking cap, work with different agents, also get the employees involved. And then we'll all come out of this pandemic stronger at the end. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Dixon. Sarah, what would be a parting shot?
I should say this is a very, very different times. We need more innovative HR. I've been talking about innovation and HR as a subject for very many years. I am glad that now people are seeing that HR function can actually be leading the innovation space within an organization. And this is your time. We wanted to be strategic. We wanted to play a key role. Now we are. We are going to be carers. We are going to be trainers, managers. We are going to be the people who are leading the emotions of the organization and everything. So this is your opportunity, even personally as a HR professional, to rebrand yourself and really be seen and visible within your organization and leading this pandemic. So I would really, really encourage that you step out and you be innovative and creative. And again, get a support network of other professionals. No question is too silly to ask. So please come out, get help, get support, and go through this crisis to rebrand your professional career. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Very insightful. Rita, your parting shot as well?
Yeah, so I agree with what my colleagues have stated. You know, these are not ordinary times. And if if companies or managers or founders of organizations didn't feel a need for HR, I'm sure their thinking has definitely changed. But I think as HR too, it's up to us to take on that leadership role and really demonstrate why we are within an organization, or at least why we are needed within that organization. And I also want to add that I think as HR, we need to really be empathetic, and we need to really be there for employees at this time. Yes, we have policies in place, but you know what? Policies can be, we can, you know, find ways around it and be more flexible, because at this point it's really about the health, the mental health state, the safety and well-being of our staff. So we have to keep that in mind as we move forward.
So much, Rita, and that's very important. Arun, do you have parting shot for us? Where's Arun? Inshallah, perhaps over to you. Your last words of advice.
Okay, I think for everybody who has attended this webinar, I think this is time for that calls for great leadership. And as managers, as heads of units, as heads of departments, as CEOs, we need to really bring out our leadership ability and really try to lead our companies out of this. And this can be very good times. It doesn't have to be a bad time for our companies. This can be a good time if we use it well, if we communicate properly, if we prepare properly, if we can see the future and try to change. We don't have to hang on those products that are not functioning anymore. We don't have to hang on those people who are not functioning anymore. We don't have to hang on those roles that are not functioning anymore. Times have changed. We can change as leaders. Let us see the opportunity in this crisis.
Interesting.
Sorry, Joseph,
interesting. Thank you so much. Yes, Arun?
I was saying that
yes.
HR needs to adopt technology. We need to automate our processes. I talked about performance management, staff training, all those processes need to be automated. But more importantly, we need also to prepare our staff to adopt the new technologies so that we're able to work during times of crisis and post-crisis. Yeah, that's what I would suggest.
Fabulous, fabulous. Well put, Arun, and thank you for your contribution. Nabil,
yeah,
over to you.
Thank you so much. I just want to highlight that definitely there are some organizations who are forward thinking, and they are starting to place HR on the board as well, next to the financial controller and next to the CEO and so forth. And that shows that the importance of the HR that is playing in the role of driving the organization forward and being able to take it to the next level. And that's what's allowing us as well, the people who are in HR, to start looking at how can we take our role forward, what can we do? As we start preparing to see what's going to happen as we go back to the market or we go back to working, it's not going to be usual. I learned from long time ago, I was given a sort of an advice when I was doing some sort of an activity, and somebody told me, always think 2 steps ahead. So the question now is not about, are we going to go back to work? It's about, okay, even if after we go back, what do we actually need to do? And what's going to be the consequence of that? And what are we going to be doing? So the more we think that forward, the more we can be more agile, more prepared to what's coming, and we'll be even more proactive towards dealing with whatever life is going to bring to us, because this is not the end of the crisis. Life is full of crisis, and we're going to be seeing more and more. We should not expect life to be normal. It is in nature unnormal. As they say, the only constant in life is change. So we need to be ahead of the curve. Thank you so much for this, and thank you for everyone else.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, Nabil, and quite thoughtful and insightful and motivational. Thank you so much, everyone. I would highly encourage, even for those who are still remaining, if you have any question, feel free to connect with the panelists who are here. They are all on LinkedIn. Connect with them, share as much as possible. They also love to learn from you and also get information from you. From ABMC, want to thank you so much for taking your time and being here. And thank you to all the panelists for contributing. The time is limited. We adapt into time. We started with 1 hour, we've gone to 2 hours. Who knows, the next time we might be doing full conference in a Zoom meeting if this pandemic prologues. So thank you so much. Thank you all for contribution. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you.
Keep safe.
Thank you so much, Joseph.
Thank you.
Thank you.